So before I even say anything, I want you to watch the following video.
The 35-year-old man from Wanzi was beaten to death after acting as a go-between and delivering $30 as Lobola for a girl who had eloped. This has resulted in the arrest of the girl's father, Farisai Jo, who has since been charged with murder. The police are also on the hunt for his alleged accomplices, that is Simbarashe Jo, Nzwaishe Majaya, and Isaac Majaya, who allegedly took turns to assault the now deceased Alex Sibanda with a catapult and logs.
So let me just highlight exactly what happened because the details do matter, especially in this case. An 18-year-old girl named Onai eloped. And in our tradition, this is called kutizila. This is when you actually get married without your parents' blessing. You just start living with a man. And according to the custom, he's supposed to send a munyai or a go-between that goes to the family with a token of appreciation or some sort of gesture to acknowledge that indeed I am living with your daughter and it's a little bit unlawful, but I am respecting you as a parent and I'm willing to do the proper proceedings so that I can be considered a real mukwasha or son-in-law. So the man was from Berengwa and he decided to do things by the book. When a woman or a young woman elopes to your house, you have to send a munyai. Tell them that your daughter is with me. And that is exactly what he did. He sent a munyai with a token of appreciation to the family. So the purpose of the munyai is to establish some sort of conversation. It is to ask respectfully so that the negotiations. The munyai was Alex Sibanda and he arrived at the family with $30. I'm not sure if this was takira kuno, which is an amount that you pay to show that you're with your daughter, or it was just an initial deposit or an initial token of respect to the family that I'm staying with your daughter. The key point is it was not supposed to be the full bride price. It was supposed to be like an initial token to show that I'm with your daughter, but they did not take this very well. The family took the $30 as an insult and they decided to attack the munyai. They beat him up with logs and unfortunately he lost his life. And the sad thing was that the father was involved in actually attacking the munyai. I need you to actually sit with three things that happened here. Number one, they did not kill the mukwasha or the groom. They killed a messenger, a middleman, a munyai. Because even if they felt insulted, they were not supposed to kill him or beat him up because he was simply a messenger. But this goes to show you just how upset and how insulted they felt about the $30. The second thing was the girl had already eloped. She was an adult. She was 18 years old. According to the law, she's of marriageable age. She had already eloped, which means that there was no way that this girl was coming back. According to the custom, she was already this man's wife. So there was no daughter to protect because she was already living with this man. But they still felt like it was worth it to go to jail just because their son-in-law sent $30. Number three, I feel like this should haunt us as a people because this was not a violation of our tradition. Kukumbira is something that is allowed according to a tradition. According to the tradition, what the son-in-law decided to do was not an insult. They were not angry that he violated a custom. They were angry because the amount of money, according to them, was too little. So they didn't kill him because he violated a custom or he violated a tradition. They killed him because according to them, their daughter was worth much more. And it reflects a very terrifying reality that we're all living in right here in Zimbabwe, that Roora or Lobola has stopped just being a gesture or being a token of appreciation, and it has actually become about the money. It has become a financial transaction. And this is exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's YAP session. How did Lobola or Roora stop being a token of appreciation and become a financial transaction? It's now about the money, not about the custom, not about tying two families together, but about the actual amount of money. My name is Edlene and thank you so much for joining my video once again. If you're interested in what we talk about here, please click the subscribe button and the bell so that you can be alerted every single time I upload a video. So like I said, Lobola has stopped being an appreciation and it has become a financial transaction. It's so bad that showing up with little money is not considered a reflection of your wallet. It is somehow considered to be the insult to the bride's father or the bride's family. And the sad thing about this to me, it's as if we've accepted that the size of the check determines the worth of the woman, as if women are literal products. Because once you believe that the number that a man brings is the value of the woman, that is how you can say that this amount is an insult to me. Because, in other words, you're saying my daughter is not cheap, she's worth much more, as if more money would literally buy a human being. But here's the thing that I need us to understand before we go any further. Rora or Lobola in our culture was never supposed to be about the amount or the price. It was a token and it was a gesture. The whole point was to say to the family of the woman that you loved, I appreciate you for raising the woman I'm about to marry. And overall, it was about two families becoming one. It was not just about two individuals getting married, it's about two families becoming one. That was just about it. Two families being bound together by a traditional ceremony. But that's not exactly what Lobola is in today's age, right here in Zimbabwe. It's about the amount, it's a transaction. People literally negotiate with a target number. Our daughter is worth 3,000 US dollars, and you're supposed to pay this amount of money for her to be considered your wife. In other words, the daughter is the product, and the son-in-law is the customer that never stops paying. So let's go back even before we used money, even before we had cattle, even before all these other forms of Lobola payment. In Iron Age Zimbabwe, Lobola was not even paid in cows. It was paid in badza or whore. Think about what a whore is. A whore is a tool that is required for you to make a living. When you give a family a whore, you're not buying anything from the family. You are literally giving them a tool that will enable them to grow their own food. So you're just showing your usefulness to this new family. In other words, symbolically, what you're doing is you're just replacing what they have lost. Remember, this woman was very useful in their home, but because she's coming to live with you, they have lost a part of themselves. So when you give them a tool, you're sort of saying, okay, use this tool and maybe replace the kind of usefulness that my wife or my future wife has been to your family. And later on, it became cattle. And cattle were very symbolic because they were alive. A beast that is given as Lobola does not just sit there. It multiplies. It provides milk. So it also shows usefulness in the new family. And then there's this Shona term that says Mukwasha Mwoyu Hapere Kujiwa. And this is exactly where people started weaponizing it. In other words, we're saying that a son-in-law is like an ATM and you never finish drawing from him. But that's not what it originally meant. In its original context, it meant that the relationship with Mukwasha actually never ends. Aurora was never a one-time deal payment and then it was closed. It was the opening of a lifelong bond or relationship. You and your in-laws were connected forever. That is exactly why there was need for a minyai, a middleman that went between the one that wants to marry and the family of the bride. And the old description of this negotiation or this process was very light-hearted. It was very fun. It was very symbolic and full of humor. The point of these negotiations was not to extract maximum value, but the point was to show respect and to make two families like each other. It was about harmony. So if you look at history, you see that the Lobola ceremony was more about joining two families together, and the pricing factor was not as important as it is today. Nowadays, when people hear about a Lobola ceremony, they just want to know how much was paid. It shows just how we have removed the importance of the two families joining together, and we only now care about how much money was paid. This is so dangerous because even the women themselves, they start valuing themselves based on how much their husband paid for them. If a man paid more money for them, they will feel like they are much more valuable. And if a man pays too little for them, then they feel like they are worth less. A whole human being being equated to an amount of money. Before we go any further, we need to talk about bride price and dowry from other places around the world so that we have a better context of why what is happening is not a good thing. So I'm going to start with our colonizers, Britain, and Britain had what is considered dowry payment as well, but is quite different from what we used to here in Zimbabwe. In the British system, money flowed in the opposite direction. It was the bride's father that was supposed to pay the groom dowry. A father would not send his daughter into marriage with nothing. He had to send his daughter into marriage with land, with some sort of goods, and with some sort of money. If a father did not have money to send his daughter with to a marriage, then that marriage could be called off. There's a simple explanation for this. The dowry payment was actually the inheritance that he was supposed to leave for his daughter. So it's sort of like an early inheritance. So the money that he has acquired and was supposed to leave for his daughter, he then gives it to his son-in-law. And then when they get married, the son-in-law is supposed to use part of that to take care of his daughter. So the money was actually hers, and the son-in-law was supposed to take care of it for her, and she was supposed to use it when maybe she got stuck and she couldn't feed herself. And this is also the same system in a place like India. It is the bride's family that pays the groom the dowry. But the funny thing is, the government actually banned the dowry payment in India because of the exploitation that was happening. They decided to say, this system is being exploited. So they actually banned it. But obviously, people are still going to do it because it's part of the tradition. The reason why the Indian government decided to ban dowry, it is because there was so much crime associated with it. In the year 2024, there were more than 5,000 dowry deaths, people that were murdering each other just because of dowry. And this is exactly what happens when the price for marriage becomes toxic, when people become so greedy when it comes to dowry. However, our own Bantu culture is the opposite. It is the son-in-law that has to pay his father-in-law some sort of dowry in exchange for the daughter. In the original logic and in the context of the patriarchal system that existed at the time, it made sense because the woman was considered to be a mutorwa in her new family. She was supposed to birth children for this man. Remember, these children that she's going to give birth to don't belong to her. They belong to the lineage. They belong to her husband. So because of this, he was supposed to appreciate the father who gave birth to his wife. The original context had no buying culture the way we see it now, where we actually have a price, we negotiate about the price, the son-in-law is trying to lower the price, the family is trying to, increase the price, and then it's a whole fiasco. It becomes a financial transaction. Remember when we said that initially during the Iron Age, you had to pay with a whore or some sort of tool that could be useful in your bride's family, and then it turned to cows. How did it turn from being cows into being cash? It is because people moved to the cities and you can't really keep cattle in the city. So because of urbanization and modernization, there was little to no use for the cows. So this is when families began to accept cash as an equivalent value of the cows. So because a beast can cost somewhere from $300 to around $500, the family just asks for the equivalent amount of money. It sounds a bit reasonable, but it actually contributed to something that we have now. The moment you swap a cow with money, you've done something right there, because the cow could literally multiply. It provided more value, but the money doesn't. The moment it's spent, it's spent. The moment the money goes into the pocket, it's gone. So it feels less valuable than a cow. So we didn't notice this happening. We just thought it was practical. Let's just exchange the cows for the cash. But what happened is, because the cash does not multiply, it doesn't feel like real wealth. We're going to end up needing more and more of it. And then something else happened. The economy collapsed, and this contributed to how we view money. We now have an unhealthy relationship with money. When a country is literally drowning in poverty, even tradition becomes a lifeboat. People are now using Lobola as a way to fundraise. So something that was just supposed to be a thank you for raising your daughter, for me, it became a retirement plan for parents. They literally have goals with the amount of money they're supposed to be given by their mukwashas. So a thank you turned into an invoice, and a collapsed economy made things worse. I want to give reasons why Lobola became a business. It turned from being just a thank you to being a financial transaction. Number one, the economy itself has turned daughters into assets. We just covered all this, but I think that is very important for us to mention it as number one. The main reason why Lobola has become a retirement plan for parents is because most of them are struggling financially. When you strip a society of jobs, savings, pensions, people monetize what they have. And what are they traditionally allowed to exploit? Their daughters. They start viewing their daughters as capital instead of just a human being. Girls are now being treated as investments instead of just children, blessings that are supposed to just be valuable even without bringing any money in. So Lobola stopped being a gift. because parents started seeing whatever they do for their kid as an investment for some sort of return that is supposed to come on her Lobola day. The language of finance began to be used on literal human beings. How sad is that? Number two, it is when cattle became cash. And we spoke about this before, how this literally changed the context of the Lobola. Once the payment stopped being a living thing, it was so easy for the greedy to inflate prices. Because if you really think about it, no one will feel guilty if they just increase a figure. But they would feel guilty if they would say, okay, we don't want 5 cows, we want 15. But when it comes to just numbers, it is easier for you to be greedy. You'd feel bad if you ask for 25 cattle, but you won't feel bad for asking for 5,000 US dollars. That reason why we turned Lobola into a business is the education factor. Daughters were not as educated as they are now. Parents are now spending much more money educating their daughters the same way they do their sons, which was something that did not happen before. But because the patriarchal mindset has not shifted, parents still see whatever they do for their daughters as not the same as they're doing for their sons. They still feel like, I paid a lot of money for her to get an education. It's almost as if they feel like they are owed for sending their daughter to school, their own child. I paid all this amount of money sending her to get a degree. Were you not supposed to do that? Who was supposed to do it? Is your daughter not a child the same way your son is a child? This logic does not make any sense to me. It is so absurd to me that we say that if a girl has an education, then she deserves a higher bride price. What does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? I don't get it, honestly. I don't get it. How can we just price human beings based on their CV? Or she's a doctor, so she deserves more amount of money. What does that even mean logically, honestly? This is the classism that we discussed in the other video, that we are so obsessed with hierarchy as a people. We're so obsessed with saying this person is worth more than this person, but human beings are not measured by that. How can we turn achievements into a markup? It's almost like all of us are looking at this from a business point of view. This is a literal human being. The last point for me is the classism. Like I mentioned at the previous point, Zimbabweans are obsessed with being at the top of the food chain, of being higher than everyone else. This is why we buy cars that we can't afford. We send kids to schools that we can't afford. Everything is about appearing to be much higher and better than everyone else in your vicinity. So when parents are pricing or negotiating with their mukwashas or their munyais, what they're thinking about is how they're going to be perceived. If they manage to get a mukwasha with more money, it means more respect to the family. So it's almost like a social signal of superiority if you receive a lot of money from your mukwasha. Sometimes it's not even that they need the money, they just want the flex. They just want the clout that their daughter went with a lot of money. It's so disgusting to me that after such an important ceremony where two families have literally been joined into one, the first question everyone wants to know is how much was paid. We don't care about the union that has actually happened here. We just care about the amount of money. That is the problem with the whole system. Everyone just cares about how much money was paid for her instead of just being happy that she has found a lifelong companion. I thought I was done, but the last one that I want to mention is social media. Social media. It has turned Lobola ceremonies into performances. Lobola has become content. It has become an envy signal. You're better than the rest of the women that never got this. What were you wearing on that day? Who designed your dress? The decor, the plates, how expensive looking is the groom himself, the cars that he came with. It has gotten so bad to an extent that a lot of grooms actually have to hire cars, expensive looking cars, just to go and do a Lobola ceremony. So these days is not just a ceremony, it's actually an episode because it's supposed to be posted on social media. So how it appears sometimes matters even much more than the joining of two families. So all these things contribute to why we are now treating Lobola as a transaction and not just a family event. A lot of women have actually internalized this very corrupt system, thinking that if a man pays a certain amount of money, then it means that he doesn't love her or it means that she's worthless. We are literally equating our own value as human beings to an amount of money, which is very absurd. There's no amount of money that can purchase you as a woman. There's no amount of money money that is adequate for you as a human being. A human being is priceless. Lobola is just supposed to be a gesture. Your husband is just supposed to appreciate your family, and that's it. It has nothing to do with the actual amount, because a culture that was invented to bind two families together can end up being a reason for resentment. Challenge is if the bride is a product, the mokwasha becomes a buyer and the father becomes a seller. And this mentality does not bind families together. It actually creates rifts. This can actually cause the groom to have resentment for the bride's parents. And this is completely contrary to what Lobola or Roora was supposed to be about. So although most families have kept this tradition, the dowry payment, the bride price, it is not being done according to the tradition. It is now simply a platform for greed. If we really want to keep the tradition, then we'll keep it simple. Then we'll keep it affordable. Then we'll keep it minimum instead of pricing it at the maximum. My name is Edlene, and thank you so much for watching my video.